Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of TrueNAS Tech Talk. Today, we heard you like updates, so we're going to update you on our update process and how that's going to change in the future. We'll address some of the additional feedback we received about the app's IP address change that's coming in June. And Chris and I will discuss some of the different methods to access your TrueNAS and the TrueNAS services from outside your home. So, Chris, we got to talk about updates today, basically, not just
we
talking
got
about
to update people on updating in general. I wanted to take a moment today. This is a good opportunity because we're already on our side. I know Fangtooth is the newest exciting thing that just dropped, but we're already knee deep into Goldeye work, right? Our development work starts long before you guys start downloading and testing and playing and complaining about things. So that's how it goes here. But I wanted to take that moment today to talk about the future work we got going on in the fall release that's going to modernize how the updating system in TrueNAS works. So the online updating system in TrueNAS, it's been pretty static for more than a decade now. I mean, it's showing its age. We had this concept of update trains originally back in the FreeNAS days where you had to manually select which release branch you wanted to be on, and then you'd receive updates to that branch until it was no longer supported. So showing my age here, you go back to the FreeNAS days, if you've been with us that long, that kind of made sense back in that era. I mean, you had 9.10, you had 11.3, you had 9.0. Those trains would run for some time. We're talking 12, 18 months plus in some cases, right? And so you'd sit on that train for quite a while, receive your updates, and then eventually you'd make the conscious decision to go from, 9.3 to 9.10 or from 9.10 to 11.3. And those updates could be, again, long periods in between. So over time, we did, of course, make adjustments and improvements as we went along, as software engineers often do. We did start adding some capabilities so we could automatically redirect a train from one to the other as it reached the end of its lifespan. But that was really only a partial solution. We still had this idea, or get the core concept of this idea that you had to jump trains at some point, front and center. It was right in the UI. It's a drop down. It was just in your face, right? And so as we started getting into the scoping for Goldeye, this is one of those things where it's time to go and modernize that system a bit and come up with a little bit better way of how we recommend software updates. And we've kind of already made moves in the recent years to do that. We've switched to more situational based software recommendations based on the profile of the system you're administrating. So you've already seen this in forms of the software status page that we put up. I think, gosh, what has that been, a year now? I lose track of when we first published that. Chris, do you remember? It's been a while.
It's been a couple of years, I think, since we
Couple
started
years
doing
now?
that and keeping that as update controls.
Yeah. And that's been great, right? That was a first step in this direction. So the software status update page, for those who haven't seen it, that's where we publish the table showing you, hey, if you're an early adopter, this is the release we'd recommend for you. If you're general adopter, we'd recommend this. If you're a conservative user, this is the release that's probably best for you, right? It's just IX's and TrueNAS's way of recommending a particular release version that we feel has reached a threshold of quality and adoption and stability that for that user profile, it makes sense. So that's great. Again, first step in what we wanted to do here long-term in the software. And if you administrate multiple TrueNAS systems, which a lot of us do, I personally can have two or three different systems at any given time. It's possible you have multiple use cases that you're considering for. You have different risk profiles based on the particular system you're talking about. So again, I mentioned I usually run 2, 3. I've run more. I think I had 6 at one point in my house, but for a whole different set of reasons. But the idea is, again, they all tend to have different risk profiles, where I had some where my primary system, of course, is more of a general use case, conservative. It's a home lab. I can take a little downtime. I can annoy the family if a few things are offline on a Saturday because I'm tinkering with the hardware, not the end of the world. So again, I'd lean more general than conservative like that. I don't generally share a lot of things out with, outside people outside of my network. So I can deal with my kids complaining. I just tell them to suck it up. The stuff will be back in a little bit, right? You can get back to your Minecraft server later. But then of course I have my backup TrueNAS, right? That's the one that I like to keep more on the cutting edge. And so I tend to do either the tester or early adopter releases there because frankly, as part of my role here at TrueNAS, I'm testing and giving engineering feedback on features and how things work and looking for bugs. I try and be very engaged with the software prior to it reaching the general community audience. So I can at least say, yeah, this looks pretty good, or give feedback and we adjust things as we go. So that, again, pretty common. I think a lot of us all fit in that situation. I don't know, how many systems do you run, Chris? You're probably multiple at this point,
I
right?
was going to say on a regular basis, there's a minimum 2, and it's usually more often 3. It depends if I've got, so like lots of systems I use for testing, again, for, some of that new GPU hardware, because I'm a GPU nerd.
Yeah.
And then just the additional profiles. There's also lots of fun features coming in Goldeye that I like to poke at. And of course, I'm not going to do that on what I call my home prod system, because I do share some of my stuff outside my house. Some of my family relies on things outside of there as a backup repo. So I don't want to just let them know, hey, randomly in the middle of the day, it's going to be down, or, so that one's a little bit risk averse. But definitely the other guys, I've got systems that I would run in what I would call definitely an early adopter profile, and other ones that I'm just in that full on developer mode. I'm running the Goldeye nightlies on it and seeing what breaks and what doesn't.
Me and you are mostly in the same boat then. Again, I assume a lot of our users are, because I imagine most of you either have 2 systems, maybe more. If you're replicating, you have 2. A lot of people might have 1 and they're backing up to the cloud over Cloud Sync and all that. And that's cool. But at the end of the day, you still have the same problem. You kind of have to manually go look at the software status page and then do the mental work of saying, okay, based on this, I want to be on this train and I'm ready to update at this point. Meanwhile, TrueNAS is just sitting there alerting you the whole time. Like, that's annoying. We need to fix that, right? So in Goldeye, that's where we got thinking, okay, how do we clean this up and make it a lot more seamless of a process? And what we came up with, and we've been doing some internal design work, and I'm really loving how it's going to look. I think it just looks so much better. But the update manager is going to now let you select the profile. So instead of looking at trains and wondering what these trains are and these weird names, we love our code names here: Dragonfish, Electric Eel, Goldeye. We got Half Moon coming, and then eventually an Ice Fish too. If we haven't announced that yet, there you go. Have fun with that. But the update manager, you don't need to know all those. You don't want to have to do the mental work to figure out what release that is and when it's suitable for your particular use case. Instead, we want to let you just pick the profile for the system. So you go into the system and say, sure, this is my backup system. I'm happy to take early adopter releases. Or it's my general prod. I want the general release. If I'm more of an enterprisey customer, I want the conservative or mission critical release. That's the absolutely everything needs to be rock solid and stable, and I'm not jumping till a .2 or one of the final releases in a particular release train. Going back to the old terminology. So you won't have to fiddle with those drop downs manually anymore and jump back and forth to the software status page. Now, a couple things to note on that, just to get the info out there and you guys know what's coming. For the community edition of the software, which we assume a lot of our listeners are running that, we're expecting to make all the profiles available from that software status page up to about the general release. The conservative mission criticals will most likely be reserved for the enterprise editions, at least initially. Some of that may change over time. And, we'll see how that goes and see what happens. Now, before you complain, not that we've ever heard of a free user complaining about something they get for free. Never. These updates are not going to be automatically installed. So don't freak out. Hold your horses. This is purely a notification system. Obviously, at the end of the day, no matter what train you pick, the final choice is always yours on when you're going to decide to go into the software and click the buttons to start an update. Just because we tag something as general, and it could be in a .0, could be in a .1, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be ready to take the plunge and do the update. Again, you're still going to have to go, you'll get an email, you'll get an alert, however you've configured your alerts, and TrueNAS will be telling you, hey, there's an update that fits this profile. Do you want to apply it? And then you make the decision. You may do it immediately. You may say, I'll do it in a month. I'll do it next week. You have maintenance windows. Everyone has a different situation. Again, we're not going to force you to do anything. This isn't Windows where it's going to automatically apply an update in the middle of the night when you didn't expect it, and you're going to find out the hard way. So
exactly. In this case, like to TrueNAS, no is a complete sentence. You don't want to update it. Don't update it.
Don't update it. That's right.
And I mean, that could be, how many thousand users are still running, FreeNAS 11 there, Chris? We got, there's a couple thousand out there, I'm pretty sure.
It's multiple thousands, and it's almost a little too high for my comfort. It's like, you guys, there's updates available, right? And a lot of good security updates. Now, I get it. People sometimes set a system up and then don't want to ever touch it again. Yeah. But 11.3, really? There's still people running 9.3 in the wild. Now, it's not a lot. We're talking probably less than 1,000 now. But they're out there. We see you. We know you're out there. holy crap, dude, it's
the
time.
oldest system I routinely run into is still running 9.10, and they don't want to upgrade because they say everything works now and we really don't want to risk it. And I said,
okay,
all right,
again,
all right,
that's your choice, and TrueNAS isn't going to force you to do something you don't want to do. That's great.
Exactly.
We totally get that. But I just wanted to give some examples here of why you may want to wait on an update. So a good example is, again, a lot of our audience here, a lot of you folks are homebrew, kind of do-it-yourself hardware folks, because that's really the TrueNAS Community Edition. That's what people run. There's going to be a lot of times where you're going to want to glance at the release notes and take a look and see, am I really ready to update? For example, if you're building your own system and hardware, you might have a very particular configuration or hardware. I'm using this particular GPU, or I'm using a NIC that's known to be a little bit more dodgy on driver support, or I have a really esoteric configuration use case. No, not that. But I saw what you did there. But on our side, we have to recommend things that are suitable for the wider community audience, right? So you need to, again, kind of know where you sit in that wider audience. Again, if you're doing something more off the beaten path, you got to take that into consideration. So please read the release notes, glance at the forums, especially if you're kind of in that I do crazy things to my system that you probably shouldn't do if you're a normal user. Because from the IX and TrueNAS side, you got to remember, we're looking at kind of that 90-95% use case. And we can't look at every edge case and every weird piece of hardware and all that. So we're going to look at it based on, okay, we have this many users. This is kind of the inflow of bugs we're seeing. Everything looks good. It seems like, 95% of the situations are well mature at this point for most users. Yeah, we're going to put it in the general train and recommend it. But, and maybe folks don't know this, is if you haven't noticed, TrueNAS has a lot of users. So even at 95%, that 5% of edge cases can still be thousands and thousands of people and systems. So make your updating decisions accordingly. If you're a little bit more adventurous than the average person and do crazier things with your TrueNAS, you may fall into that 5% of, I do weird stuff. I used to have a sticker on my laptop that said I void warranties. You guys have seen that one before with all the different screwdriver types on it. It's awesome. If you have that sticker on your laptop, you might be in the 5%. Just throwing it out there. Okay. So
exactly.
Again, take that into consideration when you're making your choices on upgrading. Look at the release notes, look at the forums, and see if people who have similar setups to you have ever hit any issues. Again, if you're doing crazy things where I run 150 apps and I'm doing all kinds of weird stuff, yeah, maybe take a look. You're probably in the 5%.
Exactly. And again, like Chris says, it's just a recommendation engine that we're working on here. It's going to tell you that it's available. And I know a lot of you, I definitely see in the community, you're always out there the day something comes out, even the hour that we finish publishing it to the content delivery network, you're rushing out to smash that update button and get the latest and greatest. So just consider, you say, hey, maybe if I'm doing something wild and crazy, if I've got a dozen apps, if your system is more in that sort of home prod where there could be more people than just you being upset if it doesn't come back up perfectly, maybe you move yourself down that release notes there and say, instead of running on early adopter, I'm going to leave myself set on general.
Mm-hmm.
But
if more power to the people who do want to early adopt, because we love the feedback. It's super important to getting it to that general state is making sure that it's working for everyone. And frankly, I do sometimes update to the early adopter even on my prod system, especially right before the release goes out, because I want to, again, say I'm running the edition you're about to deploy and not lag behind. But that's
exactly. The RC1 of Fangtooth did in fact land on that home prod machine of mine. That was probably one of the first times I'd gone pre-release on that home prod box, but there was some changes in there I wanted to have take effect, and I was really happy with it.
Yeah, I did beta on mine as well the last couple of releases, which is great because I haven't really had a lot of problems with it. But on the other hand, if there was an issue, I knew how to fix it. I have access to the engineers here, and I can say, hey, we found an issue here, and they can get it fixed so that others don't see it. So that's great.
And if you want to be able to have access to those engineers, you come onto the TrueNAS forums as well. We've got the feature requests area. That's where you can drop in those things. we do have our engineers and our other employees from TrueNAS. We do come into the forums. We do read these things. We don't always have time to respond, but we do read them and we do see them. So please don't hesitate to give us the feedback there. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And if you see a legit bug, again, submit a ticket, debugs. I'd rather have too many tickets and we have to close them as duplicates, which we do. Again, don't take it personal. We're not trying to be rude. It's just I've got the same ticket 5 times now. I'm not going to go and personally write a response to every single one. I'm just going to close it and say it's a duplicate of this other thing. But I'd rather have that than the opposite, which is everybody assumes somebody else reported the issue and then nobody submits it and we don't know about it, because we can only kind of fix what we see otherwise.
Yeah. So let's talk about something that we did get a lot of feedback on here a bit, Chris, which was, of course, the apps, the IP addressing, and that sort of discussion about changes to electric eel and whether or not people would need to update. So we did see a lot of spirited discussion, we'll say, about the worry that we were going to force updates to Fangtooth in order for the apps users to keep getting the updates. Now, we did come on in the previous episode and we kind of clarified that to say, no, you won't have to go to Fangtooth. You'll be able to stay on electric eel, but you might need to reinstall your apps in place. So we continued to, we'll say, get some constructive suggestions on that, Chris.
And we had vigorous debate internally,
we
too.
Had some vigorous and spirited debates about that, both externally and internally. So why don't we go over what we're changing again, and hopefully this is going to be the last time we're clarifying things.
Sure. So again, to let people know the context here, is one of the biggest requests we've had since we released Electric Eel with Docker as the backend was people want to be able to bind to specific IP addresses for a whole host of reasons. Like, I want to run a specific thing that's forwarding a port on something that's not my main TrueNAS management IP. I get it. Makes total sense. Heck, I'm using it here on some of my setups. So we added that capability in Fangtooth. And then, of course, the apps catalog has to grow the associated capability as well, so that those drop down and options show up when you click the app configuration or install it for the first time. Originally, the plan was going to be that there's going to be a migrator we put into Fangtooth, which handles the seamless update of the pre-IP addressing version of the app to the IP addressing version of the app, because some structural things have to change in the background with regard to the app catalog. There's a big pull request open if you want to go look, if you're curious to see what changed. Again, no secrets, for open source. You can go see. It's not hard to find. But originally that was intended to be a Fangtooth thing, because it is a little messy. There's some code changes we had to do on both the TrueNAS side and the apps catalog side. And as a result of some of the comments and feedback we got from you in the community, we took another look at it and said, okay, is there anything we can do to make this a little bit more seamless for those who still are on the electric eel? Because again, they're more risk adverse, or they don't want to potentially have to add and remove apps to get but they want the new IP addressing and they want their updates. So everyone wants their cake and eat it too, right? And so what we came up with is we're actually going to push one more update to electric eel shortly before the June 1st, I think. That last week of May. We'll have the release date here sooner, but it'll go out before the apps catalog gets updated. And what this is going to be is an update purely for adding this migrator capability for applications, so that if you update to the latest version of Electric Eel, if you're still on that train, we'll use that word again, you will be able to then, after the June 1st date, when the app IP addressing goes live, update your apps, and then magic. It'll look just like on Fangtooth, where your apps come back, and you now have an option to go select IP addresses to bind to and port forward from and all that good stuff. So that's a good change. Again, it's a bit of work and a bit of a pain in the rear on our side to make that happen. But we did take a look and said, I think we can do that a little better and make that more seamless for people.
Yeah, we weren't able to make the apps catalog backwards compatible. So we said, well, can we make Electric Eel forwards compatible with this?
So yep, that's exactly the decision we had to make.
There'll be that one additional patch coming in for Electric Eel. And as long as, like you said, you apply that before that June 1st timeline, before that main apps.
Let me clarify. You can apply it after the fact. You'll just, while you're on the previous version of Electric Eel, you'll see an error when you try and update, like, it doesn't recognize this new apps IP addressing format. You'll probably see, I think, either a traceback or an error in the UI. I haven't looked at it specifically. But at that point, when you see that, just go click the update button on your TrueNAS, let it update and reboot, and then try again.
Yeah, we did say this episode was going to be about a lot of updates, so we're going to say that word a lot. I'm going to do a counter in the transcript to see how many times we go through that, Chris.
Oh gosh, okay. I'm sure it's more than a few.
All right.
Well, cool.
Well, the other main subject outside of updates that we talked about, of course, was the idea of being able to expose services on your TrueNAS safely and securely when you're behind a firewall. So again, I guess one of the super common use cases for TrueNAS for people at home is they love to run these third-party applications. And as I do, they kind of make these applications available to, their family, their friends, or even just they want them available to themselves when they're outside their home or their office. So.
Absolutely. I was going to say, that's the boat I'm absolutely in. I think you're in too as well, Chris. Like, I'll just rattle off some of the ones I run in case you're curious. Image. Like, I moved all my photos out of Google Cloud a while back. Best decision I ever made. It's fantastic. My wife's iPhone syncs to my image server. We have, 25 years of family photos, kids photos, and we never delete one. No. You never get rid of any of those. You keep them forever.
Exactly.
So awfully lot of photos. Image has been a lifesaver. I run things like Jellu, which is we're also book nerds, me and my wife, and we have a ton of books. I think we're legally classified as a library, my house now, by the whatever the technical definition of that is. Jellu is my book indexing tool, so I can index all my paper copies.
Works better than those the Dewey Decimal cards, Chris.
Absolutely. It's great. I love it. And then Kavita for my ebooks, and Olama for running a local AI locally, Open Web UI, so I have a good web interface. Of course, got to run your Home Assistant VMs, among other assorted things. We've run Terraria servers and Minecraft servers, and I think a Pal World server for a while too that the kids were playing on. So again, I probably have in the neighborhood of 24 apps running at any given time now. Okay. That's maybe more than most. We'll see. I'd be curious to hear your feedback in the comments. But once you get into this space, one of the very common questions we get asked on the forums is, how do you expose those services safely and securely outside your network? Okay. Most of us are in this boat if you're running apps. It's useful to be able to reach some of those services when you're either at work or on the road or on your smartphone and just out and about, right? Or if you want to share with friends and family. I think you said you do that.
I do.
Some of your things.
So let's talk about real quick the one way that you definitely do not want to do that, and that is, do not just put TrueNAS directly on the public internet. Whether it's you have multiple IPs from your ISP, or you see that little option in a router that says, oh, just port forward or DMZ, that is never the answer. Don't do that, especially if you're exposing like any of the management or the SSH kind of interfaces. Please don't put TrueNAS directly on the internet. Even if you have the strongest password in the world, you are going to subject yourself to so much port scanning, so many traffic.
That's just asking for a disaster.
Yeah.
I like to say, Chris, there's 1,000 right ways to do this. There's 1,000 wrong ways, and then that's the most wrong way to do it. So please don't do that.
The most wrong way. If you're one of those people who loves to do network security things, and you say, okay, I've got a completely isolated network, I may do that just to see, how many people go about port scanning and seeing what the most common passwords that they're trying to break into things are. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll set up fail to ban on a server, and I'll have it just piping the logs and say, well, it's the old wall of admin, and password again. Well, nothing exciting there. Let's see what new comes through. So,
I think we used to see all the brute force attempts from the Czech Republic was a common location we got hit from for a long time when we were running, the public web services and all that. Not TrueNAS, but why subject yourself to that? Don't do that.
I mean, for me, it's a global problem now, because you never know where they're coming in from. They're always going to bounce off like a Tor exit node or some other system they've compromised anywhere in the world. So you can't even rely on, geofencing anymore.
Yeah. So what apps are you running? You say, have we got you on Image yet, or have we made that step?
I am definitely overdue on Image, because I am constantly bouncing off that 95% storage warning on my Google account. Again, this is kind of a do as I say, not as I do. I do have Image, but I haven't fully migrated everybody over to it yet. So I got to set up some time to do a big ingest of data there.
It's not that bad. And once you get it done, it's done. I even went and grabbed a Python script that goes through and reads all the photo metadata and organizes them by, you can set up your own profile or how you like it. I like by year and month for the directory structure, just so it's easy to go look on the file system side at when those photos were taken. And then within Image, I can tag things and group things and put them in albums and all that good stuff.
So I'll definitely be leaning forward, tenting my fingers, and listening intently as you're speaking here, Chris. Go ahead.
So one of the things I wanted to highlight here on the podcast is I went ahead and wrote a guide many months ago. This would have been sometime last year on kind of how I did it back in those days. I've changed a little bit since then, so I'll update folks here. By leveraging Tailscale on my TrueNAS, I was using Nginx Proxy Manager and, of course, an SSL issuer. And then in this case, using Cloudflare for free. I might add, all this was for free. To be able to have my cake and eat it too, I have my applications, my secure services. They all have valid host names, and I can reach them both in and off the network, right? It's great. I didn't have to I don't have anything set up. I do not have a single rule on my firewall anymore for any of these applications. Again, if you're having rules in your firewalls to forward things, okay, I have concerns, but I get it. Do what you got to do. There's 1,000 ways to do it right and 1,000 ways to do it wrong here. I'll state that as many times as I need to get the point across. But the guide, more or less, the way I had originally set it up, and we'll link to it here in the show notes as well. And I'm sure Chris is showing it on the screen right now. It's up on the forums. We talk about how using Tailscale on the TrueNAS devices directly, so they get a Tailscale IP, and then TrueNAS or Tailscale on my phones, for example, I was able to go ahead and set up Nginx Proxy Manager, go into Cloudflare, and I own my own domain, so I would do subdomains like image.domain or whatever for my different services, so it's easy to remember and bookmark and all that good stuff. I would issue those SSL certificates that are issued from Cloudflare using their API keys. Again, see the guide for more of the details on how to set that up. It's all written down. And then voila, with that, I was able to, on my phone, I could be out and about, my Tailscale network's connected. I could go to image.domain. whatever, and it fires right up in a web browser, valid SSL certificate. Everything is happy. It works the way I want it, again, without a single port being forwarded on my router. Okay, so that was originally how I set it up, and that's what the guide's going to steer you towards. Since then, it's a little bit more nuanced. I've actually made it a little fancier and nicer. What I've done is I've configured, and I think I added some comments. So again, take a look at the thread. That's long, but it's worth a read. I've set up an exit node on my Tailscales. So I have two TrueNASs. Some of them run some services, some run the other. And I set up an exit node on both because it'll automatically go into HA mode. So if one TrueNAS goes down, the other one will automatically take over, and my remote clients can still reach the network. It's awesome. It's HA for your VPN, basically. And now, instead of using the Tailscale IP addresses that I'm popping into Cloudflare and registering DNS entries for, I'm actually using the static IP addresses on my local network. So why did I do that? I did that so that devices on my local network, which I don't feel like setting up Tailscale on, I don't really need to. They're never going to leave my local network. They're fixed. That's like other desktops and stuff. Like, I don't need to put Tailscale on my wife's Mac or on my kid's desktop. It's like, why? They're physical desktops. They're never leaving the house, right? So now they can still go to image.domain name, whatever, in their browser. And guess what? They see a valid domain name with a valid certificate. It looks great. I didn't have to do any VPN stuff. I'm not tunneling within my local network. That's kind of the one thing I've changed since then. It works beautifully. Matter of fact, it works great. So I have my cake and eat it too. From my phone, I can be out and about. I was just in California last week visiting the head office and doing some things. And it's like I have access to everything I do on my home network just by connecting to Tailscale on my laptop or my phone, and away I go. It's pretty fantastic, especially because I have image set up to do things like photo backups when I put my phone down at night and it's on the charger. It's really great for that kind of thing.
Yeah. And you're able to keep all this stuff for yourself. I'm getting flashbacks to that. Everybody's seen the King of the Hill meme where he says, I don't want to save to OneDrive. I want to save to the documents folder on my computer that I own in my house.
Right. So that meme hits hard because it's so true. Like it's my data. I want to put it where I want to put it.
Exactly. It's do you own your data? Do you own your stuff? And you can say, yes, I definitely do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I do. No, it's been great. So that's how I do my personal setup. Again, feel free to swap things in and out. This isn't sponsored by Cloudflare, so please don't take it that way, that we're not a shill for anybody. That's what I happen to use. Only ourselves, right? That's what I happen to use. But again, if you go look at Nginx Proxy Manager and look at the SSL certificate issuers, there is a long list of other issuers you could use. So again, pick and choose the one that makes the most sense to you. If you don't like Nginx Proxy Manager for some reason, because you like to do things the hard way and want to run catty, I mean, fine, cool. you do you. Like, I am not judging at all. You can accomplish the same thing with a variety of different tools, which more or less will get you the exact same setup at the end of the day. And they all have slightly different nuances. And again, if you're in that 5% we talked about earlier, where you got to do things the complex hard way, have at it. Again, you do you. No judgment. Just do it well, do it securely. And remember, putting your TrueNAS on the DMZ is never the answer.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
The beauty of open source is you have a myriad of different ways to do something. Not all of those might be great.
But hey, you know what? That's what the forums are for. If you have an idea, you're thinking about trying something, setting it up, toss it on the forums. You know, the one thing that people love to do is share their opinions. So you can always get somebody to either give you good advice or will crap on it if it's a really bad idea. Like, that's fine. Get that feedback. Reddit and the forums are great for that.
Exactly. But do be nice when you're out there, guys. If you're giving somebody feedback, if they don't have if they're in that side of maybe they're using one of those bad ideas, don't just yell at them. Point them to one of the good ideas instead.
Absolutely. Not everyone comes to TrueNAS with 20 years of networking security experience under their belt. I know some of you have that, and that's awesome. But again, remember, we all started somewhere, and we all started in that place of, I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Exactly.
It takes a while to learn.
Exactly. To somebody, 10,000 people learn something new every day. I think that was one of those XKCDs. Hey, be happy they're one of those 10,000 that are coming to ask the question.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right. Speaking of questions,
that was a nice segue. So we got a couple of quick questions here. We got one coming in from James. It's regarding our new LXC instances powered things in Fangtooth. So he's got, looks like a couple asks for us. He says, so first off, could we please add a checkbox to the UI to allow a read-only bind mount of datasets into LXC instances? If we specify the read-only flag from the Incus command line, it works in the instance but breaks the UI, which throws a validation error. Well, so there's one thing. Again, I think we talked about this. If you are jumping,
is that a bug or a feature?
Line, if you're jumping into the command line, you can do things that may cause the UI to have some issues with it because not everything is exposed there yet. And then the second one, he says, can you do recursive bind mounting of data sets into instances? If you want to mount like all of the child's data sets from within a data set. So if you've orchestrated your data so that you have like a, we'll say a media folder, for example, and then you've got, movies, photos, music, ebooks, something else. If you got more than, 10 or 12 of them, or maybe you've done something crazy and you've got, a separate data set for every month and year, the current UI is very clunky to do that, he says. So what do you think on that, Chris?
No, that's good feedback. And those are the kind of things, again, a handful of these I think are just going to get automatically done as part of the updates we're doing to Goldeye, because there's a lot of work in this space right now to expose a lot of these functionalities. But I will recommend, again, we have a forums and we have a feature request subforum. These are the kind of good things to toss there. If it's more of a bug and steers it that way, file it as a bug ticket, that's fine. But some of these are feature requests, like the recursive mounting, for example, is a little interesting because we'd have to do some of that on the UI and middleware side to go look at, oh, you have all these other mounts. Would you like to recursively mount them in? And then we're doing the work in the background to like pass that all into Incus for you for the individual mounts, right? That's fine. Good feature request. Go put it out there. See who else wants something like that. You might find out everyone wants it, or you're the one weirdo who has 150 data sets nested. Like you said, you organize your photos with year and month as an individual data set. I don't know why you would do that. Maybe there's a use case for that. That seems a little overkill to me. But again, you do you. So if you think there's others who may want that, put it as a feature request. Let's get some votes on it. And then that'll bring it to our attention to see where it needs to sit on the hierarchy of things to go implement.
Yeah, I'm already thinking about that one and going, okay, well, what happens if you want to recursively mount everything and then not these? Because now you're going to have to like make the exclusions in there. So
that's
the wheels are already turning here. I can see some of the challenges we might face.
This is where the engineering types, we sit down and go, oh man, so by enabling this feature, we've exposed these other edge cases now, which means I have to write another feature to say, well, I want to exclude this set of data sets. And oh, by the way, now it needs to be a regex. And oh, by the way, so it can get complicated again. So please try and think through. Sometimes there's a reason we don't want to implement things. I do have a belief, and the engineers typically do as well, that, the KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid. Sometimes simple is the best answer just to avoid opening Pandora's box. And now there's 100 different ways to foot shoot yourself. But we also got to have the trade-off of flexibility where sometimes you do need to expose, more nuanced options to give people that use case that has a lot of, validity to it. So again, that's why the feature request forum makes sense, because we get to see how many other people say I would benefit from that use case. I'm putting my hand up.
Exactly. All right. Leading on to the next question, which actually in this one we've pulled out 2 from James this week. It looks like, unless it's a completely different James, but I think it's the same gentleman here. So again, he says, thanks for the informative and interesting podcast. Well, that's why you picked his question again, didn't you? He's buttering.
Oh, no. Buttering up the host never works. Wink,
never.
Wink.
Okay, so he says it's another question, and we're once again going back to instances, although this time we're talking about VMs. He says, is it possible to create a VM instance in TrueNAS 2504 Fangtooth with a ZVOL that is encrypted with ZFS encryption? The keys based on auto locking on boot. It says, in context, in the RC, I successfully migrated 2 VMs with disks that are encrypted ZVOLs. In the release, the option to attach disks outside of that hidden IXVert dataset seems to have been removed. Now, ZVOLs have to be imported to that hidden dataset, and it does not seem possible to import encrypted ZVOLs without first copying data to an unencrypted one.
That is correct. That's how it works today. This is one of those ones that's a lot trickier to do right, because now we're having to marry up ZFS native encryption technology with how Incus wants its volumes to be available. And so not impossible to do, but this one is a great candidate for a very detailed specific feature request. And the feature request more or less will be, I want to be able to use an encrypted data set within the Incus volumes, and I'd like these behaviors. Like it's not started on boot because the volume's not unlocked yet. Or I imagine the next ask is, when I do go unlock it in the UI, auto start the VM at that point, so I don't have to go click to a second section of the UI and do manual things to now then start the VM. Okay, I get it. But those are all edge cases we have to code for, we have to test for, and we have to account for in our testing framework. But again, let's see how many people want that kind of functionality. How many of you are encrypting the actual underlying ZVOLs? And if there's enough traction, then yeah, absolutely. It's something that'll have to land on our list to look at. And remember, all these cost time, which costs money for engineers who are not working on other potentially important things for the software. So we have to prioritize. Again, voting on the feature requests is crazy important.
Yeah, it's kind of that chicken and egg problem a lot when you hit things like encryption and trying to get apps or VMs or instances in this case started up, because it's a question of, well, it needs access to the unencrypted volume, but that process is going to start later, and you might want to key unlock certain things, but not other ones. It's always a bit of a challenge, and like the old joke goes, knock knock, race condition, who's there?
Pretty much. And this is where it gets tricky, especially with VMs, because we have seen people with setups where it's like, oh, well, I want a boot order hierarchy. In other words, I have this one VM that hosts this service, it's a database, whatever, and then I have other VMs that fire up that can't start until after the first one's fully up and the database is initialized and accepting connections, otherwise they'll boot and fail. Okay, so now we need boot hierarchies. Do you need to inject delays? Because sometimes it's not quick. Right. So there's a lot of, it can get complex quick. And again, we have to account for that, because the very next question is, well, why didn't you expose this delay feature I needed? Because my VM takes, 2 minutes to fully initialize.
Exactly.
Here we go.
What's the reasonable default? And it's easy to fall down these rabbit holes. And that's, again, like Chris says, that's why the feature request forum exists. We can determine just how large of a scope this is, how many users would really benefit from it. And it's not that we don't want to do it. It's that we just have to look at things in sort of a priority order, where if we say, if there's, 5 people who are clamoring for this feature, okay, there's definitely some interest. If there's 500 people clamoring for a different one, that one's probably going to take priority.
Yeah. And also based on complexity, because again, I can have 500 people say we want this feature, which is like 12 months of engineering time to go implement. I can have 5 people clamoring for a feature that takes 5 minutes to implement. And so sometimes, again, you got to understand the nuance here. We have to look at it in that aspect as well, on how big of an ask that is versus how many people want it. And sometimes we do slip in a handful of those are easy. I know not a lot of folks are asking for it. Good example is like, I just want a command line tool available. Oh, okay, we add it to the build system. It was safe and easy to do. It really didn't take much code. And then another one is like an ask like this, where it's like, that's a lot of Python and UI code to write, and a lot of expensive test time to get it right.
Exactly. But I mean, it doesn't mean we don't want to hear those requests. It doesn't mean we're not reading them. So by all means, please keep submitting them in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
On that subject, I think that's about it for us today. So thank you again, James, for submitting the questions. Thank you, everyone, for continuing to have lots of spirited discussions. We had a lot of comments under our last video, so that was really good. Please keep those coming in. Please submit your questions as you continue to have them to t3@truenas.com. Drop a message in the comments section below. Join us on the forums at forums.truenas.com. Please do the usual YouTube things. It really does benefit us. It helps the algorithm out. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and keep listening to T3 to stay on top of all of TrueNAS and the latest tech topics. We'll see you next time.